Gary B., these yields are presently low. I agree with you. It's sort of like waiting for that credit market, Godot when it comes up and materializes. But for the president, it might not be an issue this year, and he might get in, and then it comes collapsing, or that is reversing, whatever. But it isn't happening now.
I think you summed it up perfectly, Neil. We have to be just at this point less bad than everyone else. You talk about some of the European countries, where the interest rates they need to attract people to buy their debt are closing in 4, 5, 6%. That's astronomical compared to, what the 1.2% you just noted. So, will we get as bad as everyone else? Look, if we're going at the same rate where our debt now exceeds our GDP, yes. But for now, all these politicians, Obama, and he's in the driver's seat, can kind of kick the can down the road and say, hey, look, we're doing great. We're doing better than everyone else. I think that kind of bodes well for him.
Oh, come on. Take the good news when it comes. The market said today that they have confidence in the American economy and that the interest rates are going to stay low. That's good for housing. It's also good for Barack Obama. Just, live with it. The interesting part, though, is that the debt situation is a real problem that has to be addressed. If you're going to address it, though, you probably have to talk revenues. And if you talk revenues, you're looking at a millionaire's tax debate, and that may
Why do you have to talk revenues if you're spending so much?
You cannot bridge this gap with cuts alone. I don't think anybody seriously thinks that's the case.
Yeah, but you can't bridge it with the millionaire's tax. What you need is economic growth. But, Neil, the broader issue about whether this bodes well for the president, possibly yes, because what we're talking about is France possibly losing its AAA, Greece getting kicked out of the Eurozone, and for the first time the SEC is telling the big banks, look, you need to do more to tell the investors and the American people about your exposures to Europe, not just your net, but your gross exposures in the
bottom line is we do have a big debt problem. And Richard, here's where I very fundamentally disagree with you. We have a very clear spending problem. You don't address that spending problem by piling revenues into the mix.
I agree.
And you don't charge more for a crappy product. The crappy product is a government that over promises and under delivers. First address that, and then maybe if you say after that we haven't done it, we've done everything we could, then address it.
Fair enough. But in the end, the Democratic Party, the president, have put spending cuts on the table.
Oh, come on. Both sides. And I'm saying, I'm casting aspersions on both sides. The spending cuts aren't cuts. You and I both know, even the most aggressive plans that both parties have submitted leave us with $9 trillion in more debt over 10 years. Neither party has done anything on this.
I'm not defending the particular plans.
And neither am I.
What I'm saying is that the conversation is going to have to include those cuts, but it cannot eliminate new revenue.
I think it should. I think it should. That's where you and I will fundamentally disagree, and I respect the heck out of you. But my only point with this, Gary B., is that we lose the argument not going far enough on spending. I think to his point, and it's a very good point, the history is such that we don't go far enough on spending, so revenues invariably do have to come into the mix. I think we got to get very serious about that spending, or revenues invariably will have to be part of the mix. I don't think that's etched in stone, nor should it be.
Well, and the other thing, Neil, that people seem to forget is that once you reach new spending thresholds, as we have under this administration, it's kind of like to Richard's point, those become kind of baked in. Well, that's the number we have, and we can't possibly cut that. So you just build off this bigger and bigger base, and then any quote-unquote cut just slows down the rate of growth. It never really cuts into the deficit. That's going to be a big problem.
I think what worries me most, Lizzie, is that fundamentally, the cut is not an operative word. I mean, you're slowing the growth. It's something you got to reverse this. Exactly. A lot easier said than done. Draconian cuts right up front could do a lot more damage. The fact of the matter is, though, that presidents, and I think Richard was out of this, be they Republican or Democrat, never get a handle on this problem. Even Ronald Reagan, the government grew bigger.
Yeah.
I mean, bottom line, no one seems to get a handle on it.
Right, because there's an attitude that every spending thing that needs to be done in Washington is called emergency spending, things spending on the census.
Right.
But, Ben Bernanke has already said, look, the population is aging. We face fiscal collapse. And Moody's, though, to your point, has said, look, we're not going to see any spending cuts until after this election. But what we're talking about now is what is happening in Europe and possibly China. When you're seeing Treasury yields break down to 1.9%, that's not safe haven status. That's bomb shelter status. Investors are really
very worried. But what worries me about that, Richard, is that, and you're quite right, we should be grateful at this level. Could you imagine just a slight uptick with all the debt we hold, what that will mean?
Let me see if I understand this. Low interest rates are a bad thing?
Yeah, for the interest costs and the
No,
debt.
did you hear what I said? I said that it leads to a cockiness on the part of people. Well, we don't have a problem. It drives people back because they say, well, obviously, people are buying up our debt like it's ice cream.
Neil, it's morning in America in the economy, and there is good news here. All the cautions you put out there are real, and we ought to look at them.
You already have people, if they all thought like you, well, now we can relax because people are buying our crap.
Me relax? You're talking to the wrong guy. There's got to be vigilance. There's got to be spending cuts. There's got to be revenue stuff.
I'm telling you, every time there's news like, and I welcome low interest rate too. I share Lizzie's view that the reason why they're so low is because there's a panic mentality setting in, and we are a safe haven, and you know there's something you've said of that. But to then see it as an endorsement of what we're doing, and we can lay back. I know you're not saying, but be careful of that, and be careful about getting too sanguine on this. You know.
Fair enough.
Really? Okay.